Good evening, everybody. Monday Morning Quarterback, episode 126. Glad you could join us this evening. Um, the snow's finally starting to melt here in Indiana, so that's exciting. Racing's starting to get closer and closer here in the Midwest, which we are super excited for. If you didn't catch our social media post last week, our factory support schedule is on our website, so you can see where we are going to be this season. We've posted a large snapshot, probably 60% of the races, a lot of the major travel. That's all on the website for the whole year, and then we'll add in dates as the season progresses and we see where we need to be, and if we're developing a new product for a specific market, we change that up a little bit. But a lot of cool places we're going to get to go this year. We're hoping everywhere gets to race in the whole country, and so really looking forward to that. Tonight's topic is how to get the most out of your practice day. So we know a lot of you are getting to the point in the season where tracks are going to start having play days. You might be renting a racetrack to shake the cobwebs off, do all the system checks and everything on your race car that's either brand new or you rebuilt over the off season. Maybe check out some of the new components that you got over the off season. And so just wanted to kind of break down with you guys how we go about testing and what are some of the things that we like to look for and the things we like to do when we go to a practice day. So certainly there's sometimes you're just going to the track to do a leak check on a new engine and make sure everything's good for your first night. But if you are going there with intentions to try out some new things, we want to help you get the most out of that day. So been very fortunate to test at all sorts of different levels, from obviously quarter midget stuff all the way to IndyCar and NASCAR. Worked with some really good crew chiefs and got a lot of great information and pulled a lot from them as far as how they create a testing plan and some of the things that we do throughout that day to make the most of it. So I came up with a little quick 5 steps or 5 rules to live by with your testing. And so we'll go through those, and then at the end I'll answer all your questions and I'll give you a little bit of information on all 5 of these things. So the first thing that we want to make sure of is that you have a plan and you stick to it. So when I'm going to go to a test, I have a number of things that I want to experiment with, try out. And so I'll develop a plan. And when I'm testing any component, whether it's a new shock, a new torsion bar, a specific setup change that I'm curious about and how that's going to affect the race car and the feel for the driver, I like to always do an ABA test. So by that I mean if you're starting with a 100-pound right front spring and you want to see what a 150 will do, I will start with the 100, get my feel, put the 150 on, see what that does. Was that better, worse? Where was it better, worse? Note those changes. And then I'll put the 100 back on and see if the 150 was better when I put the 100 back on. Was it worse from a driver feedback, feel, maybe time standpoint? Because a lot of times on dirt track racing, the track is changing so much. We want to definitely isolate, was the part change the reason for the difference in feel, balance, speed, driver feel, or was it the track changing? So we try to always do everything when we can in a ABA format. So we know we're getting a true read on the part change. So that's number one. The other thing with part number one is, I'll fade back so you don't have to just look at that blue screen. The other thing with number one is it's okay to have to audible out. So if you have a plan and your plan is to go a certain way and it just doesn't work out the way you wanted, it's okay to have a couple alternate plans. So like, I guess my best analogy would be a head football coach of a football team. He's got his first 15 plays scripted, and if his third play was designed for third and short, and all of a sudden he's in a third and long situation, he's going to change out of that to make the most of the situation. So if your desire was to try a stiffer spring package and then do a bunch of other changes with that, and the stiffer spring package just is complete garbage, well, don't continue to go down that hole. Go back to what you know, and then do a few other changes. So that would be number one. Number two is kind of a no-brainer, but be as prepared as possible ahead of time. So a lot of times you need to make these changes quickly on the fly. You don't have a lot of time. Dirt track racing is extremely difficult to test because track conditions change all the time. But pavement racing can be that way too if track temp is changing, or we're heat cycling tires or getting a set of tires hot and then they're really cooling down. So that's also why the ABA is so important, to make sure that it's not, oh man, that change wasn't any good, but really we've kind of ruined the right front tire and it's not going to be good. So be as prepared as possible ahead of time. Try to pre-build or pre-set up anything that you want to have changed. Have it laid out so you can make the change as quickly and as efficiently as possible and get back on the track while you have the most similar track conditions. Number three is a big one for me, and that's don't change too many things at once. So don't make 5 setup changes and then go out and run, and you can't isolate what was good and what was bad, or what was made a change at all and what didn't. So try to keep your changes to 1 or 2 things max. Number 4 is always have a list of objectives. So what are you trying to accomplish on this race day? Are you just trying to find more speed? Is the driver feel not as good? Do you need the car to come in quicker or come in later? But have a list of objectives. What are you trying to accomplish on that day? And that should correlate to your number 1, to your testing plan. And then number 5 is don't always chase the stopwatch. So again, whether you're dirt or pavement racing, the stopwatch can really be detrimental to your testing. So dirt track racing, the track's going to deteriorate and change so much. It's really, really hard to make changes, and your sole decision on whether that was a good change or a bad change is a stopwatch. Same thing asphalt racing. You could say, hey, I know at this track a 1450 is a great time, and on the particular day you're testing, there's nobody in the world could go a 1450, whether it's weather or the track just doesn't have any rubber on it yet. So don't get too wrapped up in chasing the stopwatch because it's not the end-all be-all, and it's really, really hard if you're the only team there. Now, if there's 5 teams you compete against out there testing, and you can use them as a little bit of a guide, then by all means that will help. But sometimes you're an instance on a play day where there might be 4 or 5 different divisions running, and there's really nobody comparable to you, or you're out there by yourself. So keep all of those things in mind, and I think that'll make your testing day more enjoyable and help you get the most out of it. Kevin Crumb's being a comedian. He's knocking my quarterback, which I don't know. They're saying that Drew Brees might come back next year. I love Drew Brees. He brought the Saints probably the only Super Bowl championship I'll see in my lifetime, but I really wish he would just enjoy life with his kids and not get more banged up. And I hate to see him ruin his legacy because he's just lost so much arm strength. But Russell Wilson can zing the ball, but he can't manage a game plan or make as quick a decisions as Drew Brees can, Kevin. Neither of them can get to the Super Bowl right now, apparently. So anybody have any questions, feel free to fire away. Tonight, when this episode is over at 9:30 on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, the next episode of People Behind the Products drops. So if you've been enjoying that, please let us know. We'll continue to do more of them. If you think they are horrible, let us know as well, and we'll give you content of another kind. So far, people I feel like have been enjoying those and getting to know the people here that build your shocks and service your products a little bit better. But please let us know what you would like to see, as we are trying to give you as much video information and content and whatnot as we can. So, Kevin, great question. So, testing on a race day, what stagger increments would you like to have available? On dirt, I would like to be at least a 1-inch, especially maybe not so much for a sprint car. You could maybe be 1.5 inches, but really an inch. If you can have your stagger in 1-inch increments for dirt track stuff, and then on the pavement side, 1/4 inch increments will help you make sure you have the right stagger on for the given track conditions, and you're not fighting a too much or too little stagger situation when you're testing. Scott, on a non-wing sprint car, what causes the car to want to bounce the left front or porpoise the right rear to the left front after taking a set from apex up off the corner? Car goes in good and doesn't push the front. So a number of things can cause a right rear bounce or porpoise from right rear to left front. One, if it's a gas shock, not having adequate gas pressure in the shock. As you increase gas pressure, that will help calm it down. If it is a twin tube shock, just not having enough dampening to control that. A bad torsion bar can do that, and just not having enough air in the right rear tire. So you can have the perfect shock setting, a brand new, fresh, great torsion bar, but if the track conditions are calling for 10 psi and you're running 7, the shock and the torsion bar aren't designed or built to make up for the deficiency in the setup. So just sometimes being too low on air pressure will do it as well. Brandon, are junior sprints worth having a rebound adjustment on the front? Yes, I believe so. You don't get as much weight transfer front to rear on a junior sprint as you do a micro, but where I feel like it helps on the junior sprint, so if you ordered non-adjustable shocks, we're going to basically valve those for more of a dry slick setting, and where on a junior sprint you can make speed if the track's got moisture, and keeping rebound in those front shocks and keeping the car freed up since you are so underpowered. That's where it's really nice to have a rebound adjustment on the junior sprint. So I would say probably 3/4 of the junior sprint shock packages we build are adjustable on all 4 corners. Thomas, do you think a double adjustable right rear would be a good asset indoors dirt for a midget? I feel like a double adjustable is a great asset for any dirt car to really help tune in what you want. Certainly a midget indoors, I still feel like that's a really good tool to have in your arsenal. For example, a place like DuQuoin, it can have a fair bit of moisture at the start of the night, and then at the end it's polished off, slick, very smooth, and being able to decrease a little bit of compression as you're increasing rebound is very beneficial. Also, when you go to like Chili Bowl and it gets curby in the feature and starts to build a ledge there from center to exit, being able to go up on right rear compression and control the car is really important. So Ryan, how much of a disadvantage or advantage do you think it is for your driver to also be your main crew guy, not crew chief, but does most of the work? That can be a challenge, Ryan. It really depends on how fast the program is ran at your track. So if you're racing a micro at a place that has 4 other classes and there's plenty of time between each time you're on the track, and that gives you adequate time to watch the track, determine what setup changes you're going to make, get those done, get a drink of water, make sure tear-offs are on your helmet, and then get focused on what you do behind the wheel. It's probably not too terrible. There's been guys that have been extremely successful at all levels of racing that do a lot of the work themselves on the car. But if it's a very fast-paced program, that can be really, really difficult to do everything and kind of concentrate on what you need to do behind the wheel. So sometimes you really don't have a choice. If you can't get adequate crew help to go with you on the weekends, you just got to do the best with what you have. In your case, the more organized you can be when you leave the shop, the better. Save you some work there at the racetrack. And that brings up a good point too that I didn't mention, and I wanted to, as far as testing. The driver that you're testing with really has to be able to make consistent laps and give good feedback. Extremely difficult when you're quarter midget racing or junior sprint or micro with younger kids. On the quarter midget side, like, I live and die by tire temperatures. A 6-year-old's not going to give you great feedback, but you need to still ask them and get their wheels turning and get them thinking about what the car's doing, because that's going to benefit them and you later when they can actually give you better feedback. So I live and die by tire temps on the quarter midget side as far as setup changes. But you got to make sure that the driver can do consistent laps. Otherwise, when you're making changes, you're not going to know if it's their line or or the setup. And they got to do the same thing with both their feet on the dirt side every lap when they're testing. So we're actually testing what we're changing on the race car and not different driving styles or different driving techniques. It's fine if you got to go through that if you have a novice driver, but those aren't days where you want to do a bunch of setup changes. You just want to work on your driver getting laps. So, Michael Lang, Eibach helper springs both sides in the rear winged lightning sprint. 950-pound car, 180-pound driver. I don't totally understand your question, Michael. So do you have a 4-coil lightning sprint and then you're running a mainspring and a helper spring in the rear? Or are you referring to a bump spring? I don't understand your question there. Let us know. Is that a 4-coil car or is that a torsion bar car and you're referring to a bump spring? Yeah, Jeremy from it. Yeah, he's curious too. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what your question is. Eric, on a quarter midget running a ratchet, should right side tires be the same temp? Typically your right rear on a quarter midget, at least in my experience, when you're rolling really, really good, is going to be within 5 to 10 pounds max hotter than the right front. If the right front is hotter than the right rear, I'd say we have a tight understeer condition. If the right rear gets a lot hotter, then it's probably sliding the right rear and you're loose. But whether you're on a ratchet or locked, I think you should be between 5 and 10 pounds hotter on the right rear than the right front. He's on bump springs, front coilover car. Okay, so Michael, you're using bump springs across the back on a winged lightning sprint. And I'm assuming you have 2 inches of bump travel. Should you stiffen the springs? I still don't quite understand your question. Why don't you give us a call tomorrow? I'll be more than happy to walk you through that. We do use the Eibach bump springs across the back in some wing applications, and we have some data on that and can help you select what rate you should be running and what your gap should be. I won't be here tomorrow. I might be back Friday. We're having a baby tomorrow, but you feel free to shoot me an email with some more information or your phone number, and I'll be happy to call you. It is garrett@csishocks.com, and we'll get you fixed up. I apologize. I don't, probably a lot to type And if I can probably answer your question over the phone a lot quicker. Dave Sharpley, when do Hudson Hornet t-shirts hit the market? They're on the website now. So if you want to own Hudson's first ever t-shirt or hoodie, they are on the CSI website now. We just got them. I just got them up about an hour or so ago. So cool design on there. Black shirt, a front and a back print, and you can get a limited edition Hudson Andrews racing shirt. Eric Long, send T-Bone to the hospital. Yeah, I don't think my wife would like that. Brad, are you still using the progressive right rear bump package on many non-wing cars? I'm touch and go with it. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it hasn't worked well for me. I'm sure I'm off on my bump engagement when it's not good for me. Is it still pretty popular? Yes, it is popular still. The USAC guys have got to where they like to cover up their shocks so you can't see who's running what and when, and that's totally understandable. The biggest thing with the progressive kit, and I'm still a huge proponent of it, I still think it's the best bump system on the market. The challenge with it is it's so tall, sometimes it's hard to get the adequate bump gap. And that's one of the reasons we started using the Eibach bump spring, because it has a really nice short installed height. And I've been working here the last few months on running a softer Eibach bump spring with an internal bump puck to get a dual rate. So we're running like a 75-pound spring with then a bump rubber inside of it to get more of a progressive rate, and that seems to be working well. So while the progressive kit is awesome, if you can't get enough bump gap, then it's detrimental. And when you start taking washers and pucks out, it gets a lot more linear, and then at that point you start to lose the benefit of that. But yes, there are still a lot of guys using it. So thank you guys for the congratulations. On a dirt midget, would you rather have your right rear spring or shock do more work? So the spring or the torsion bar is doing a different job than the shock is, okay? The spring or the torsion bar needs to hold that corner of the car up. The shock is controlling the movement and how quick it transitions from forward and back and left to right. So they do two totally different things. If you have too soft of a spring or a torsion bar, too soft of a spring rate over there, going stiffer on shock doesn't fix the problem. So they're definitely doing two different things. Brad, when it's super slick, I've had it right. It straightens the car up when I run the top and it's really drivable. When it's been bad, I am super free off the corner and propped up. I would say when that's the case, you probably don't have enough bump gap and it builds rate too quick and unloads the right rear tire. And it's tricky because as you add fuel in the car and you lose ride height, you need to have your bump gap. I typically always go in the middle, so halfway through the race, it's at the perfect amount because I don't want to be in it way too much early when it's full of fuel. So there has to be some give and take there, sprint car racing, where you put so much weight over the back of the car for a feature. Evan, any advice on going to a new track? The best advice I can make is seek out who is fast there and who can give you some useful information. That way you are starting at least on the right gear set and a good baseline setup. I use Google Earth a lot to overlay tracks. So if you don't know anybody there and you're not sure, Google Earth, you can overlay multiple tracks. So if you got your home track that you have a good setup for and you're going someplace new, lay them over the top of each other and get a good idea on the difference in size, so you can select the correct gearing, and then when you get there, try to make friends with somebody who is new or who's experienced there. Tell them you're new and just make sure you're on the right track, and then take very good notes so when you go there the next time, you got a good place to start. So Tim, what do you think about running springs on the rear of a D2 midget? So obviously that's extremely popular at the moment. There's been a few guys on the USAC side who have won some races with a 4-coil car. In my opinion, And I've said this before, and maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but in my opinion, there's a reason we got away from 4-coil over cars 20, 30 years ago. I feel like a coil front bar rear is more forgiving. I feel like you're shooting at a bigger target. Can a 4-coil car work? Absolutely. You saw Tanner Thorson really fast at points last year with it. Meserol's been fast with it. But there's a reason that not everybody's went to it, and those guys are fast whether they're on 4-coil or coil front bar rear. So my opinion, stick with what the masses are doing and do it better than them. So what I mean by that is, rather than trying to experiment with some off-the-wall setup that you might waste half a season chasing down, if you run a good baseline setup and your maintenance program's better, your car's perfectly square every time you hit the track, your tires are in good shape, your shocks are fresh, your bars are fresh, do all those things right, you're going to beat 3/4 of the field anyhow that aren't dotting their I's and crossing their T's. So that's my opinion on it. All right, lots of good questions tonight. We certainly appreciate it. Here in about 3 minutes, you can see the latest episode of The People Behind the Products. Let us know what you think of that. Comment on the video, and please share the video. Share this to your friends. We do this live every Monday if you're new. And hope you guys all have a fantastic week, and hope to see you at a racetrack real soon. Take care, guys.